right, welcome back to Cusp of Coffee. I'm Dr. Klerk, a community service dentist.
And I'm Uwais, a fourth-year dental student.
And on the note of being a dentist, that is now a truer statement than it was in the previous episode, because I finally got my degree. We finally had our graduation ceremony and everything. And I had some thoughts on grad that I wanted to start out with, because I feel like when you sign up for university, the sort of image that's presented in like movies and online and stuff is like that day of graduation, the day where you throw your cap in the air and everything's done and like, move on to the next phase of your life. I feel like in reality, it doesn't work like that, in part because graduation happens like 5 to 6 months after you finish. So for most of us, it's kind of a thing of like we finished exams, and a lot of us finished exams at different times. And then we all sort of drifted apart and started working and going through our own things and getting used to ComServe and all that. And then randomly in May, we were like, oh, let's all go back to Pretoria to graduate. So you show up in the afternoon in a little like wizard's gown and stuff. And then you do the ceremony, and there's a bunch of people that you don't know from different faculties. And then you sit and wait your turn, and then you get your little certificate, shake someone's hand, go sit back down. And then by the end of the ceremony, there's this big countdown, and you throw up your cap, and you have to catch it again because you need to get the deposit back that you paid. So it's kind of like, during that whole graduation ceremony, I just kept thinking how this doesn't feel anything like I thought it would 5 years ago. Like it wasn't even close. And like, it was kind of funny because a lot of us had just like moved on from the university. So it's kind of like I didn't care. It's like I did it to do it, but part of me is like, whatever. So,
you kind of move through that whole like, I'm emotionally, I've graduated already. Now I have to go back and just do the actual physical part of it.
Yeah, for me, it was like, we've spoken about this before, but just that idea of the arrival fallacy of like, oh, once I get here, everything will be fine. But like, I was sitting there and I was thinking about like the groceries that I still needed to buy, and like, did I take out the trash this morning? Like, I just couldn't remember.
The big people things.
It's kind of like life goes on, and there's never a point at which, all of a sudden I'm happy and content and everything is fine. It's like it's sort of a continuous direction that you work towards instead of like a fixed point that you get to. So that was just very interesting that day. I don't know, I kept thinking about it as I was like sitting there, like, in my head this was much more wow, but now that I'm actually here, I'm just kind of like, it is what it is.
I feel like I might have, as far as things stand now, might have a different experience to that, because, and I've told you this before, but so there's like that graduation at the end of the year, and then there's the graduation in the middle of the year. So the one you did was the middle of the year one. But as far as I remember seeing on social media and everything, all of our final years actually have their whole graduation thing with the gown and the cap and the scroll and everything in December, in like the end of the year. So all of ours didn't actually come back for this mid-year graduation. They were all done already last year. So mine actually might end up being where I finish my final exam and then a couple of weeks later there's like graduation. So that might end up being like it, which actually from what you're saying sounds like it could be better.
I think because then everything is still fresh. So I think it changes a bit from university to university. But with us, for example, at the University of Pretoria, at the end of the year, we have what's known as the oath-taking ceremony. And that is when it's like you and all your lecturers and your family, and it's just like, everyone that was with you during the past half a decade of doing that degree. And then you lay down the oath, and then you get your doctor title. And that for us, I think, felt like graduation. Because that felt pretty special. But the actual graduation of the university, I think just because it happens so long after the fact.
Doesn't
And so
feel
much
like
life
it.
has
Yeah.
happened in between you finishing and like actually having the graduation. That's just kind of like And I've seen a similar experience with like my colleagues that come from other dental schools,
Yeah.
where it's like if it doesn't happen, if there's not anything at the end of the year, there's just sort of no emotional resonance when you actually get to graduation or whatever your final ceremony is of the university. But speaking of uni, you are now on recess. You survived your first semester. Well
Yeah.
done, especially in fourth year. It's a big achievement. You've basically ticked off 7 out of the 10 semesters, which is pretty wild.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah. When you put it that way, it's actually really nuts.
So what are your kind of thoughts and feelings sort of at the end of the first semester, and maybe kind of looking ahead to second semester?
Well, this by far has been the longest semester of my life, and second semester is going to be way shorter, like almost I don't know, I want to say half the length of this semester is second semester, because things happen like exams and things like that, so it cuts into your time. But this first semester was like 22 weeks of just pure working, like no exams, because we have full all our modules are year modules, so I didn't even get to break for exams. So we were just literally writing every single week, and clinics and assignments and presentations and all that stuff one way right through. And so it was kind of just like a survival test, like just to keep going. And honestly, it doesn't even hit me that the semester is over yet. Like sometimes I still flinch to study. Like I get that like itch where I'm like, oh, I need to.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I'm like, oh wait, I actually don't have to study. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like 3 weeks off and then heading right back to it. So second semester is going to be a bit more tough, I think, because we have to write the same amount of tests in half the amount of time. So there's going to be about 2 tests a week. So they're genuinely trying to like actively find more ways to kill me. They haven't succeeded so far. 7 times they tried, and on the 8th time they might just succeed, but we'll see what happens there. Stay tuned. As far as the first semester goes, though, it was quite fun. Like I think like the clinics wise, that obviously has always been the part I enjoy the most, just working. And I found my feet in a lot of different clinics. I've spoken about this before, but if you listen to some of our older episodes from last year, then the oral surgery clinic was like my worst one, and now it's become like my second favorite. And Pros was also one of my most stressful clinics, and now it's become my favorite. So it's really, really weird how 2 clinics that I didn't like has become like my most, like I look so forward to those clinics. And it's also next semester I'm going to have double Pros, so I'll have 2 Pros sessions a week, so that's even better. So like these things, it's just weird how it changes the more you do it, and the more different types of procedures you get to do. Because now I'm doing chrome partial dentures, acrylic partial dentures, and I'm doing relines and rebases, and like there's just so much more than just fulls, which is what you're stuck doing in third year. And yeah, and oral surgery is honestly just about finding that feeling, you know, like riding a bike. It just clicks, and then you have a lot more of an easier time doing it. And a lot of new things, just like doing endos for the first time, and like just balancing things with peds clinic, with patients, like seeing kids doing pulpotomies. I still haven't done my first one, but that's also coming up probably. Just a lot of new things all at once. A lot of the workload has increased, but a lot of it is crossing over also. So the same types of things you're looking at in path will come up in rad, which will come up in like, I don't even know, so many different, like in auto med, like there's so much crossover, and I'm starting to see the bigger picture, whereas before things were kind of all split up, you know, individually. So yeah, I think I've really enjoyed it the most. I've enjoyed the clinic the most that I've ever enjoyed clinic before. I haven't enjoyed the studying, but that's just a part of it. Like, honestly, it's just, like if you look at my planner, I have this planner on my table, on my desk, where it's got like a block for each day. And I would basically, if you flip back to the start, like maybe April side, I would like write down every single lecture I'm going to do every day and map it out, and I'd follow that. Towards the end, it's just like empty blocks of just me being like, okay, I'll just on the fly, like, okay, I'll do this lecture today. Okay, never mind, I'm too tired. I'll do this tomorrow. Okay, never mind, I didn't do this one yet. Like, it just became such a blur, but literally just trying to survive and just push through. Like, the way everyone looked at the end, like, it was just so dead, like, just like so dead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a war of attrition.
Yeah, exactly. And you just see, like, it's so interesting talking to people because everyone is like got like shared stress, but individually in the sense that, like, some people are like really struggling with their pros case because they have a bit of a more like difficult case they're dealing with. Maybe some people are just like really, really hating the endo, or they're just not coming right with that. And then other people are just like really having issues with the lab and the work is not getting done properly and they're struggling to meet that deadlines. It's just so weird because everyone's doing the same thing, but they've all got these different areas or these niches where they're struggling. And then everyone just gets together and vents and takes a big crap on everything. And then everyone feels kind of better. And then you just leave and it's like, okay, cool, let's come back tomorrow and do it again. So yeah, but it's nice. I can definitely see why it peaks in fourth year for us. The final years look very chilled out. Like, the only thing they're worried about is getting enough units for Crown and Bridge. Like, everything else is kind of done. They're just like, just coming every day and working. But yeah, I think next semester I just need to keep doing what I did. And I don't know if I said this before, but I feel like at the peak of this level of stress, I think I just need to cram as much as I can in and try and prepare for the next year as well, just so I can start ticking off those quotas because they're cumulative. So if I can do more endos this year, I have less next year. So things like that. That's kind of my sense of looking ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. A few interesting points there. One thing you mentioned is that thing of like, sort of everyone coming together and venting, but everyone kind of has their, like, it's a shared experience, but everyone still has their individual experience as well.
Yeah.
I read this quote at some point. Honestly, cannot remember where it's from. But it essentially boiled down to all joy and suffering happens in context. And I remember, like, last year, for example, in final year, where I would be like super stressed about not having done any crowns yet, and then I would look over to someone else and they haven't done any pulpotomies yet, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least I did pulpotomies, and then I'll feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
So it's all about context and comparison, and sometimes even if the talk is maybe like kind of negative of like everyone just venting and stuff, you do kind of get a sense of like where you are and where you aren't. And for me, that helped sometimes, because I could be like, okay, at least, because sometimes you get in this mode of just stressing about everything, but then after you hear about like other people, then it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, maybe I don't have to worry about those modules as much, and let me just try and focus more a little bit on these modules where I'm actually behind, but maybe I'm not as behind in the other ones as much as I thought. And also there was this interesting thing that I thought about a lot last year, especially final year at University of Pretoria is rough because they do kind of backload a lot of the stuff. So those final few months of final year are insane. It sounds like it's a very different experience at EWC, where it's like it kind of gets front loaded a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Third year, fourth year. But yeah, tail end of final year for me was like super rough. And I remember having this thought of like, I'd look at another classmate and I would be like, oh, this person will definitely graduate. And then I'd look at myself and I'd be like, I'm going to fail, but then I'd like kind of do the mental math and I'm like, okay, objectively, I'm sort of at an equal point at this other person. And yet I'm like 100% confident the university is going to pass them. And I don't have that same trust in myself.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it last year was just like kind of doing that mental gymnastics and just talking to other people and seeing that like, oh, when you have a conversation with that person, they are feeling the exact same thing. Like they look at you and they're like, what are you worried about? You got this. And then they look at their own situation and they're like, I'm going to be here for another 5 years. I'm never getting out of here.
5 years.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of just about like stopping that like spiral of hopelessness and just remembering like, okay, we're going forward at least. It might not feel like forward, but some progress is being made every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like also I noticed that like in the name of like progress, I see like a lot of people, and you know you hear it so often. People say like, "Don't leave your quotas till the last minute. Don't do like," and you think like, okay, fine, but a lot of people kind of I've noticed are using that like they listen to that advice, but they still end up doing that, and a lot of the times it's because they're scared to jump into things, like doing the amount of new things that we've done this year, it's easy to get like to like kind of run back to third year stuff as like a and use it as a crutch. Like I know a few people who've only finally got comfortable doing fulls in pros, and so now they just keep booking full patients and they just keep doing that. Like yeah, okay, fine, you do need those quotas. Like yeah, okay, fine, but you do need like way more single units or like different like you need more like partials and chromes and things like that, and no one's like they just don't want to jump into that. Like a lot of them have just left that till the last minute.
Yeah.
Endos also like they're scared because it's a completely different ball game, and so people have just they keep booking fillings every single con session. It's just fillings, and you walk past the cubicles and you see the same person doing fillings every single week, and it's like you have a 4 hour con session. Use it to do the endo. Like you need to restore that tooth afterwards anyways. Like why are
Yeah.
you still just booking basic fillings? And I think a lot of that comes down to like just being scared. And there's actually a quote I saw this week. I think it was, I don't know where it was, on Reddit or something, but it literally was like, it just stuck with me because it literally was like, how did it go? If you can't fight the fear, then do it scared. And that just like, it hit home so much for me because I was like, that's half the time what you're doing. Like, if you either have to fight the fear, but if you really are so scared of doing something, then just do it while you're scared and get through it, because the next time you do it, it'll be so much better. Like the first endo I did was like I've only done three, and the first one I did was like it was really not good at all. Like it so much things went wrong, and I was so not happy with it at the end. And two later, I'm not perfect at it, but I've just grasped a lot of the concepts better. I've asked more questions. I've made those mistakes, and I'm in a way better position to actually book an endo patient with confidence. You know, I can now move on. Okay, I've done single canals. Let me try two. Then let me try three. Let me try four. And it's just the only way you do that is if you just do it when you're scared. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people don't do that because they kind of just let that, they kind of just think, oh, I have to study and I have so much other stuff going on. I'm just not going to worry about that. I'm just going to just do what I know. I'm going to do a filling rather. And I just don't think that's the way that you should go about things.
Yeah. I think that it's sort of easy when like choices are presented to you to kind of take the path of least resistance. And there's this idea in psychology known as forcing functions, which is basically when something comes up that makes a choice for you, and you are kind of forced down a certain path, whether you want to or not. And I think a common example is something like a deadline where you don't want to do something, so you choose not to do it. And then, literally, the day before it's due, it suddenly becomes a forcing function where it's like, I have to do this, I have no choice. And then in a way it's kind of easier because now you don't have to make the choice anymore. It's just, well, I got to do the thing now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it. And then also just on the fear thing, there's this really good book. It's called Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday. And I read that near the end of my first fourth year. And in my first fourth year, I was like scared of everything. But then I had to repeat because of my broken wrist. And going into that second attempt at fourth year, there was this line from Courage is Calling that really stuck with me, which is that it's okay to be scared. It's not okay to let that stop you. And so what I realized sort of going into fourth year for a second time was that like a lot of these procedures I'm still very like iffy with. I'm not great at them, but like let me just do it, you know? because I can't let fear control what I do and what I don't do. And just kind of getting used to being uncomfortable and being anxious and being nervous about stuff, and just kind of getting through that process actually ended up building confidence, because I think confidence has a lot less to do with doing something successfully than just surviving failures. Like if you failed at something 5 times and you're still standing, it gives you a certain level of confidence that, oh, this thing isn't going to kill me because the past 5 times it didn't kill me. And so going into final year, I very much took the approach of like trying to do my molar endos as soon as I can, trying to wrap up my pros cases as soon as I can, like especially at the start of the year. You know, there aren't like tests and things happening. There aren't really assignments. So it's like you could just go to campus and then go home and like enjoy the time.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, no, I have all this free time. I'm never going to have this much free time in final year again. So literally from the start of the year until 6 o'clock, I was there in the evenings, packing teeth, making wax rims, like just pushing prosto as hard as I could.
Yeah.
And I remember getting to second semester of final year, which is literally just half a semester pretty much, still having a lot of work to do. But within those first 6 months, I had ticked off a lot of other big boxes. I had done my pulpotomy exam in peds. I wrapped up basically all of my prosto cases. I had done the majority of my molar endos. And so a lot of the difficult, scary work all of a sudden was now behind me. And I could just focus on the stuff that was left. But, you know, to kind of get yourself to do that, there's a certain level of like courage involved with that, and you have to put yourself in a position where you are going to be very uncomfortable and maybe more uncomfortable than you need it to be, but you're kind of doing it in service of like you in 2 or 3 months from now. And I think that's a very important idea to keep in mind when you're studying something like dentistry, because dentistry has a finish line. And so if you can do what you can to put yourself in the best possible position when you are approaching the finish line, that's really what you want. Because you don't want to be getting to the end and not knowing whether or not you're going to be able to finish the race. Like that's just such a bad place to be in mentally. And I think a lot of that can be circumvented by just being a little bit proactive, even though the stuff might be scary.
And you know, the thing is, like, as you're saying that, I realized that the way I find the mental space to do that, or the amount of mental space that it takes to be proactive like that, it's just, there's a lot of times where I just feel like I don't have room for other things, because a lot of the time, like for example, let's say whether it's staying late after campus to finish lab work, or coming in extra early so that you can, I don't know, something like staying late, coming in early, giving up weekends, things like that, just to actually get a head start, or things that you can do to actually plan out, and so that you in the future can be in a better spot, or so that you in the future can actually have more knowledge because you dedicated time to learning. I find that I'm only able to do that if I lessen my other commitments. And it takes a lot of your energy, it takes a lot of your dedication, and a lot of that mind power that you could be putting in other places sometimes needs to go into this. Like a simple thing is like being in a relationship. I mean, I've spent now months being in a relationship and being in dental school, and now out of a relationship and still in dental school. And I don't know if it's just a character flaw in me or if it's just how it is, but I find that I don't have the mental space to do both. And I don't know what that says about how people do that. I mean, if I see other people in my same position, in my same year, maybe, that are in a relationship, and I look at the planning that they have for the things that I want to do, or the things that I'm doing, and I feel like it's a lot more of a relaxed approach. And I see they've chosen also to spend that time putting it into maybe relationship or friends or other things on the weekends. And maybe that's just because they're not as into it, maybe, or maybe because they are better at managing that. But I don't think that's one of the things I just don't have down. Like, I don't know how to manage a proper busy personal life with dental school. specifically dental school. And that's just something I'm guilty of pushing forward, saying, okay, when I graduate, then I'll figure it out. Like, and I don't know if I will, it's that thing of the arrival fallacy, like you said, like when I graduate, will I have more time to do that? I don't know. Or will I still be, obviously I won't be as busy as I am now in studying and stuff, but you get the point I'm trying to make. To actually be proactive, like you said, I find for me it takes a lot of mental space and a lot of my time and a lot of my thoughts. Like I don't have time to just sit and think about other things because I'm pouring everything into this degree that I love, but this degree that takes so much from me.
Yeah. I think the thing is, when you finish, the time component stays the same. You still only have 24 hours in a day. But what you said about the mental space and the mental energy, that's definitely way different after dental school, because in dental school, you constantly have something that you have to worry about. There's constantly background noise. And I mean, even for me, I think genuinely, I think I did my absolute best to live a balanced life during dental school. I really tried my hardest to prioritize life outside of school, and balancing that with still doing a good job within school. And even for me, sometimes life just falls to the wayside, because dental school it can be extremely draining sometimes, especially when the workload is extremely varied and the pressure is high and there's just a lot happening every single day. You do just straight up run out of energy, and it's very difficult to sort of come home from that and then, muster up all this energy to go and do other stuff.
Yeah.
And I think last year, what kept me somewhat sane is to just accept that this hard line between dental school and everything else doesn't exist for me, because when you are a full-time dental student, it is sort of part of your identity, especially when you start getting to the end and there's just a lot happening. And so I realized that, okay, I'm going to have to start blending the two if this is to work. And I just try to find ways of like making dental school a little bit more fun by mixing in stuff from outside of dental school. I think one of my favorite examples is I got really into listening to audiobooks in the lab. And I listened to like fantasy books and stuff, which have nothing to do with dentistry. But I'd sort of sit there in the lab listening to this audiobook, and I'm actually like enjoying myself. And it's like, okay, I'm still stuck here in the lab. It's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd rather be at home, definitely. But you know what? I am here now. How can I sort of mix what I would be doing at home? And it's like, well, at home, I'd probably be sitting and reading for a little bit. So now I'm just sort of mixing the two. And it's not ideal necessarily, but it is better than like not trying at all and just being miserable that dental school doesn't allow me to have a life. I think there's an element of sort of making that choice, where sometimes it can't be either or, and it's just like, okay, how can I maybe figure out how to do both? And if you can, that's usually not a bad place to be in.
Yeah. And finding, I think the thing of finding like-minded people or just friends make things so much lighter, because just running into people that you genuinely like to see or to speak to, and that people that you can speak to not only about dental school, like sure, that is the way you maybe connected, but it's not everything. It's just, it makes things so much better. So if you are in dental school and you kind of don't really socialize a lot, or you kind of just on your own buzz, try and, speak to people, be friends with people, because it just, and not even only in your year, in other years, because maybe you're just having a bit of a tough day and you're walking to your cubicle in the clinic, and there you just pass somebody in another year or even in your year, and they're doing something, you just go say hello, you see what they're doing, you help them out a bit, maybe they help you out. And that type of support system of that shared experience, and just that it just makes things lighter. Or doing lab work with somebody, or doing, going to the library and you see some people, again, that are stressing about the same thing you're stressing about. It just takes that edge off, where if you do those same scenarios, walking to your cubicle, doing lab work, going to the library, and it's just you, it's very different because now it's just you. Everything's on you. There's no one to vent to, no one to talk to, no one to take a break with. And it just becomes a very lonely, stressful cycle. And so, yeah, if you don't have people like that around you, try to like expand a bit and speak to more people because it does so much. Like I feel like without my friends, people say, if they watch my videos that I have so much fun, like, wow, dentistry doesn't even look stressful. And that's partly because obviously I don't show as much of the stressful side because I want to make it look fun. But that's also just because of the people. Like I'm maybe 10% of the video, like making it fun. It's the people around me that actually make that such a light and fun place to be. So yeah, it's definitely a very important part as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the best investments you can do when it comes to like your time and energy, is just meeting other people and trying to make friends, especially when you're a dental student. There's literally no way I would have made it to grad without my friends and my clinical partners, and just the general support that comes from being part of a group, even if it's a small group. It's kind of that idea of like when you're on rocky water, would you rather be in the small raft or on the big boat? You're probably going to feel more secure on the big boat where there's other people and stuff. So that's sort of how I look at things like that, where, maybe on a calm day you won't notice it, but the moment things get rocky, it's a lot better to know that, like, okay, I'm not the only one going through this. And I'm sure you've experienced this feeling as well, where there's this weird sort of guilt that comes with not doing dental school stuff, even if you're not in dental school.
Yeah.
Like if you're at home in the evening and it's like, okay, let me watch an episode of this series. There's an element of like guilt that comes with that. That's something I sort of struggled with a lot. And what I realized is with friends, sometimes you just need someone else to tell you it's okay to take a break, because you are sort of so used to a certain way of working and in sort of a general level of intensity with the way you do things, that it's easy to convince yourself that taking a break is the wrong move. And sometimes it's good to just have a friend point out to you that, like, hey, dude, just chill out, we had a rough week or whatever. Or like, sometimes with my clinical partner, after a long day, we would just like go to the shops and just get like something to eat or whatever. We'd go to McDonald's and just get some fries, and we just sit in the parking lot for 10 minutes. And it's sort of this mutual agreement of like, okay, we're not gonna work. This is a non-working space right now. We're just gonna unwind and talk and stuff. And it's kind of creating those safe spaces, I think, is really, really important for just keeping your mental in the dental. Whoa, that was cool.
Whoa, spitting bars, bro. Yeah, but 100%. Like, just even if you get so busy and like so crazy, things go so crazy in the clinic sometimes, and things just don't go your way, maybe. And then your friend comes out of, or your partner or whatever it is, comes out of a different clinic, maybe, and they had a similar experience, but with a totally different type of work. And you both just sit there together, and it's like both of you just know, like, this guy or this girl like went through the exact same thing I went through in a different context. We both finished, we're both tired, we both had a long week. Let's just like it. There's nothing like speaking to somebody that went through the same thing that you just did maybe 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Like it's very, very different, and so like it's so beneficial to both parties because you're doing something together to recover from something that you also just went through together, and it just helps immensely.
Yeah. Speaking of together, so something I've been struggling with lately is working on my own. So I'm in the process of studying for the US board exams, which I'll get into in a little bit. But I cannot tell you how difficult it is to come off of a day of work and you ask a colleague what he's going to do, and he's like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and then I'm going to watch this movie and da 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 da. And then the question comes back to you and it's like, oh, I need to study alone in my room for,
what is this, dental school?
however, yeah. So yeah, that has been surprisingly difficult to get back into studying. I thought it would be easy because I did it for like 6 years. So I was like, it should be easy. It's only a few months. But yeah, I noticed that when you're in dental school, everyone else around you is also studying. And so it feels normal to study. And the moment you're not in dental school, there's this big part of my brain whenever I'm trying to study now that's like, I could just not do this. I could be doing literally anything else and no one would care. And that's been surprisingly interesting to try and navigate. So I've been getting really into these like study with me videos and live streams and stuff, because I realized what a massive difference it makes just knowing that like one other person is studying and you're not completely alone in the thing. But yeah, that's just a quick thought on that. So yeah, actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about the US board exams, because I posted about this a while ago, and my DMs just exploded with people trying to get more info and stuff. So I thought, okay, let me walk some people through it and just give you a little bit of an idea. Because for a lot of countries, they kind of follow a similar structure. It's just the actual like organizations and governing bodies and stuff that changes. But the general sort of like, if you want to work overseas, this is kind of the process to go through. So yeah, I'm going to talk in the context of the US, but just know for anyone trying to go anywhere else, like probably it's going to look similar for you. Just find out with the exact country, like what the governing bodies are and stuff. Okay, so the US board exams, the plan is to write in September. I'm going to go to New York. Heck yeah. So I'm very excited for that. So I'm kind of like, I'm gonna do my exam on the first 2 days, and then I just use the rest of my time to just like explore New York, sort of mixing business and pleasure, as it were. But yeah, so the US board exams, it's known as the INBDE, which stands for Integrated National Board Dental Examination. All it is it's one really massive MCQ exam. So it's 400 questions on the first day and 200 questions on the second day.
Damn.
And it covers basically anything and everything that could remotely come up in dental school. So literally anything from like patient ethics to organic chemistry to prosto. So it's an extremely wide scope of field, which is part of what makes the exam quite difficult, because the depth of knowledge is not that much of an issue. It's just the width. And sometimes, if it's a straightforward question, but you don't know it, then you don't know it. Like there's no way to reason to the answer sometimes. So yeah, it's just a lot of content to kind of slog through, and also to pass the INBDE, you need 75% minimum. So you can't just go in there and like shoot for 50. Like you have to do quite well
the
to actually
minimum
get the pass
mark.
So yeah, already just a word of warning for anyone who wants to do it. It is going to be a lot of time and effort. It's not something you can start looking at a month before and then try to figure out from there. I have been studying roundabout since April, and I am nowhere close to feeling confident. So just know that if this is something that you're thinking of doing, it's going to be a big commitment in terms of time and also in money, but we'll get to that. So, okay, if you want to write the board exams, the first thing you have to do is you have to get something known as an ECE report, which is an Educational Credential Evaluators report. Basically, it's just sort of this organization that looks at your academic transcript and says, yes, this was in fact a dental school that this person studied at. That's basically the long and short of it. But for some reason, in the year 2024, everyone still insists on physical papers. So literally, just to give them my academic transcript, I had to wait until my graduation ceremony. And then I placed in an order with the university because it has to be like an official letterhead that is sent from the university to them. So I had to pay for this transcript, and I had to pay for it to be like sent to this institution in the US, which that alone set me back by like a few thousand.
Damn.
Then you have to pay the ECE themselves to actually do this evaluation, which ran me back just under 4,000.
Damn.
And then all of this, there's like a time cost to all of this because you have to wait for everything to actually be sent there, and then they have to send you a physical copy back. And then once you have this ECE report, then you can book your exam. Now, one of the most common questions was, can you write the exam in South Africa? And the answer is no. You can only write this exam in the US or in Canada. So you have to physically go and write it, which is plane tickets and accommodation. So
Damn.
many thousands of rands later. And then, you're now sort of ready to go and write this exam. But then you also have to pay for the exam itself, which with the current exchange rate works out to around about 23,000.
23,000?
Yes, for 600
The
MCQ
money
questions.
going into this.
So as I mentioned, this isn't something you can just do casually. It's going to be a lot of time. It's going to be a lot of effort. So just be mindful of that for anyone who's thinking of going a similar route. But the big steps is getting this ECE report, just going through the admin and paperwork process, because it really does take long to do all of this stuff. And just sorting out the practical components of how am I actually getting there? Where am I going to write? Where's a testing center? What dates will work out? Do I have accommodation? All that kind of stuff. And then in the US, you write this exam, and then a few weeks later, they tell you whether or not you've passed or not. And then if you've passed, you basically then have 5 years that this pass is valid for. So then within those 5 years, if you want to work in the US, for example, you'll need to do a bridging course that is 2 years long. So you'll have 5 years, and within those 5 years, you can then apply to the 2-year bridging course. But you need to have this pass before you can apply to anything. So that's kind of how the steps go in terms of wanting to work in the US. And then after the 2 years, you can then get a dental license and start practicing. So that's kind of roughly how the structure works.
So this test, is this similar? Is this the same test as the DAT test that they will write, or is it similar?
So the DAT, from what I understand, is what you write before you go into dental school.
Like your
in the
admissions
US.
test.
Yeah. And then the INBDE, all the final year dental students in the US have to write this test before they can qualify.
Okay.
So that's the one way you would write the INBDE. The other way you would write the INBDE is if, like me, you are a foreign trained dentist, and it's sort of just to see if your knowledge is like on par. so that you can then do further training to get licensed there and stuff. So it's kind of like it's sort of like a quality control measure in a sense. But I think there's a lot of I don't know how much of this is me with my tinfoil hat making up conspiracy theories, but going through this process, I have felt like a lot of the administration and a lot of the fees as well were just very unnecessary.
Yeah, seems
And
like
I
it.
think, and there's sort of just a lot of like small little admin things you have to go through the whole time within this process that just adds a lot of friction. And so I think in general, it kind of dissuades people from going this route. And so actually what I would say, looking at like forums and messages from people who have gone through this process, if you can just stick it through, you're actually in a pretty good spot because there's not a lot of other people willingly putting themselves through this.
Yeah.
So if you can just stick it out, the chances aren't as slim as you might think. It's sort of the saying, if it was easy, everyone would do it. But if everyone did it, how valuable would it be? And so that's kind of the trade-off. For me, part of the reason why I'm going through all of this now is because I'm not doing that much else. I'm sitting in the middle of nowhere in my console here.
Yeah.
So I have the time, I have the resources to actually do this. I don't really have anything in particular that's keeping me here. I'm not in a relationship. I don't have like a scholarship I need to pay back or work back or anything like that. I don't even own a pet. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm still young. I'm like early to mid 20s. Like if there was ever a time to do these kinds of things that just require a lot of time and effort, might as well do it now. So I know there's people that like supervisors I've spoken to that wanted to do something similar, and then they told themselves they would do it later in their career, but then you get to later in your career, suddenly you have like a mortgage and you have kids and stuff, and it just, the viability goes down to 0%. So if this is something you're thinking about even as a student, I would say get on it early. Don't wait around for it, and like when the opportunity arises, just go for it, because you're sort of just coming out of dental school. You are in the best period of your entire life to make a major shift like this, or to attempt something like this.
So
that would
easier
kind
to
of just be
study
my
also.
advice. Yeah, because things aren't that foreign.
Yeah. You haven't
Admittedly,
forgotten.
I will say I have forgotten a lot of stuff,
Never mind.
but I think it's worse if you're like 5 years down the line from dental school, and then you need to try and remember different kinds of amino acids and stuff. Like you know, that heavy theory. Like the clinical side, you'll be fine, but when it comes to like heavy theory, there's just no way you're gonna remember that. Like the brain is not designed to store info that it's not gonna use. So yeah, I do think that sort of recency bias helps a lot, because even sometimes when I'm doing test questions, it's like I don't really know what the answer is, but I remember enough from last year that I can kind of get to the correct answer, and then the answer ends up being correct. So it's little stuff like that that just like helps to improve your odds. But yeah, that's kind of the overall structure, just because I was getting a lot of different questions on it and people had very different ideas. Just to summarize, first, just graduate dental school. That's already a big one.
Yeah.
And then get this ECE report. And then once you have this report, once you've gotten through all the admin involved of getting this report, just find a place that you want to go write and just book your test and go and write the test. That's
Yeah.
kind
Also
of
having, being
long
able
and
to
short
work
of it.
towards that. I think booking
Yeah.
that is like a good thing, because now you, like, it's concrete. It's like, okay, I'm flying out this day. Now I have something to work towards, instead of just studying
Yes.
without knowing when I'm writing. But going through this whole process, and like you said, the extensiveness of it, what do you think would be like besides the fact of you're young so you can, top 3 reasons that you, or top 2 reasons maybe, that you chose America over other places? Because I know from my own research, what little I have, is that there are other places that are of a similar stature in the world that are easier to get into. Because the whole American system does make it a bit more difficult than maybe some of the other places. There's maybe a few less steps for other places, maybe less of a bridging course you have to do, things like that, where South African universities are more recognized. So why did you choose to go through all of this specifically for America?
Okay, I'd say like there's 3 main reasons, 2 of which are logical, 1 of which not so much. So number 1 reason I think is just the international standing that comes with being licensed in the US, because sort of the US and Canadian dental boards, kind of the same larger organization, and being licensed with them is kind of considered like the gold standard of dentistry around the world. And so it opens up the rest of the world to me, in that even if I go and study and I get licensed in the US and then I decide, screw this, I never want to stay here again, I never want to see another American in my life, I can leave, but I don't have to come back here to South Africa necessarily. I can choose. It gives me optionality, and it gives me massive optionality, and that I can basically get reciprocation with any other country in the world. So that for me was a big thing, because we've spoken about this before. Uwais from 5 years ago, very different person from Uwais now. Johan from 5 years ago, very different person from Johan now. So I might sit here and I have all these ideas and all these ambitions and stuff. In 5 years, I might look back on myself and think, geez, what an idiot. And so I know that the future version of me will be way more equipped and way more intelligent, and will just be able to make better choices. And I want to give that version of myself the best possible platform of opportunity. So the international standing for me was a very, very big reason. Second one, money. The thing is, when you work as a dentist here in South Africa, your money, like your income, will somewhat increase in a linear fashion up until a point, and then it kind of stays constant unless you start doing other things like opening multiple practices and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of what you make will still be tied to what are you physically doing, how many patients are you seeing in a day, or what's the difficulty of the procedures that you are doing. If you do more advanced procedures, you can charge more. And there's a lot of like, everything rotates around you sitting in the chair. And what I realized is that comparatively in the US, let me quickly look it up right now, then I can give you the most US dentist salary. Let me look this up and give you the most recent number. So as of 6 days ago, the average salary for a dentist in the US is $231,000 per year.
Whew.
That is a lot of money. To just convert it back straight, obviously, using an exchange rate conversion just like that, it's not the most accurate, but it equates to about 4.2.
Yeah.
There is very little that I can do as a South African dentist to put myself in a position where I am earning 4.2 million rand every 12 months.
Yeah.
And obviously there's confounding factors of like, if you stay in the US, things cost more. There's additional kinds of taxes. There's other things that come into play when you live in a place like the US. That being said, if you compare US expenses to South African expenses, yes, it's more expensive, but it's sort of more expensive in a linear fashion.
Yeah.
Whereas the amount of money that's coming in has increased exponentially. So it more than makes up for whatever the added expenses are once you are on that side. So that for me was a big thing, because where I am now in life, I'm extremely happy. I don't need 4.2 coming in every year. But when you have that much potential money on the table, it completely changes your relationship with money and work. Because now, for example, maybe I can choose to work part-time. Only work as a dentist a few days a week, and then I make sure the days that I'm there at the practice, I'm really giving it my all and I'm enjoying it. But then I also have enough time to rest and to work on other projects and stuff. And I'm still making more than I would be making here if I was working full-time. So for me, optimizing for flexibility, financial flexibility in that regard, was also just a massive, massive factor. And then the third reason, which is the least logical reason, I would say, and this is the worst reason to do something like this, is just when I look at the US, for me, it has the biggest question mark associated with it. For example, some of my friends moved to the Netherlands this year. They're also dentists. They work there now. And, I sort of look at that and it all makes sense to me. And I'm like, okay, I could do this. I could have a very comfortable life. It wouldn't be that difficult to get licensed there and stuff. But there's no real question mark associated with that. And I think just my personality, I sort of desperately crave variety and nuance and novelty. And just sort of a sense of adventure. And when I look at the US, I see a place that looks extremely chaotic, but that's also brimming with potential.
Yeah, the growth potential is massively.
So I just think for me as a person with my particular personality, I think I could do very well in that kind of environment. And I need a certain level of I don't want to say instability, but that might be the closest word to what I'm trying to get to. I just need a bit of a question mark factor in my life. If I can predict everything that's happening and I make a schedule and everything goes to plan, that to me feels very boring. And I just don't think that's really how I want to be living my life. So the third reason is definitely, I would say, the most specific to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think it applies to most people. I think the first two, are very sensible options as to why to go to the US. But you are correct. I think you are correct in that there are a lot of places where you could have an extremely good lifestyle. You can have good working hours. And it's not that difficult to get in, comparatively speaking, compared to the US. But I think if perhaps you sort of have that added level of you want a little bit of adventure, and maybe a bit of I'm not really sure what's going to happen in the future. If that's sort of something you crave, then maybe the US really isn't a bad option to look at.
That makes sense. I can definitely see you fitting in that type of environment. There's also a lot of variety in that place, different cities, different places you can go, and a lot of growth potential, especially in New York. I mean, compared to, I don't even know what happens in the Netherlands. So it's it's definitely a place where you can go. And like you said, the world kind of opens up because it's kind of the hub and the center of everything.
Yeah. So but I think with all that being said, I should probably get back to studying. So this is a good.
I personally, I'm on break, so I will be enjoying my time right now. I'm going to go do absolutely nothing. You can enjoy studying for once.
Look at dental students nowadays. Back in my day, things were different.
Yeah. But thanks everyone for listening. We will be back soon with another episode. Hopefully going to do things a bit more consistently. But yeah, that's me signing out. Hope you guys enjoy the week.
See you in the next one.